Hey everybody, it's Tracy again, and the Lithuania Electronic Money Institution (EMI) license has become fairly popular, and I think there's about 225 odd licensed EMIs as of today. And obviously, the advantage, or at least the perceived advantage, is the license passports throughout the EU. And there's this belief that it is one of the easier licenses to obtain for electronic money or any sort of payments, but I don't find that to be entirely accurate. And there's a few reasons why. So the general application, documentation, everything that goes over it is not unusual or different than really anywhere else, even offshore. Business plan, projected financials, what have you. And obviously the need to incorporate in Lithuania. There is some degree of economic substance requirements, which is relatively easy to be met. And beyond that, it's really not unique vis-a-vis like the Czech Republic, Poland, some other places where you may look. However, where it starts to sort of differentiate itself is one, there is a required meeting with the Bank of Lithuania representatives to whom you have submitted the application. And that meeting is typically done shortly after confirmation that a full application has been received and is typically held in person, but at times can be done remotely. And it will typically consist of two representatives of the bank who are in like compliance and subject and in charge of reviewing the application, along with a technical person who is there simply to evaluate, or will be the one evaluating, your software and your system. So for that reason, unlike what you would find in many offshore jurisdictions, is that your website, mobile app, what have you, needs to be substantially complete in order to get the license, because they're going to check for security, the redundancy, the ability to incorporate AML, KYC policies and procedures all into one thing. So you can't kind of go on there blind and say, well, hey, we're going to get a license and then we're going to like white label it, or we're going to do this, right? Which works offshore all the time, but it's not going to work here because they really want to dive into it and they tend to know what they're doing. So if there are issues with it, then it could be a problem. So that's number one. Number two is that the funds for the minimum required capital is 350,000 euro, which is higher than most other nations. It used to be lower, they increased it, and it has to be held in the company's name in a bank within Lithuania, which isn't terribly difficult to establish. It's an extra step. It's not always going to be a bank that is very conducive to EMI operations, but for purposes of just confirming that the amounts there are sufficient, you need to do that, right? And that needs to be done at the time of, or before the time of application. It's not blocked capital, but it just needs to be approved and in the account. Third, there's an insurance requirement, right? And it takes on many forms, right? And it's sort of a E&O level. I mean, what could best be described as E&O, but there's some nuance to it. And you're only going to really find it through EU-based insurers, because like the states wouldn't do it, and we don't have the exact sort of structure in terms of how claims are paid, right? Especially in like a fiduciary payments-based consideration. So that's an extra cost. It tends not to be terribly expensive, but it's something you have to get. And like anything else, like getting a surety bond for a money transmitter license, being a foreign individual, and then applying for one in the States, there's some hurdles you will encounter being if you are a US-based individual looking to obtain the license, a little bit harder. So sometimes it's easier if you have an EU representative sort of be the guarantor on that insurance, and it's kind of quasi. It's more surety bond than actual insurance, but they call it insurance. So that's the nuance to it. And like when you read, you'll see that there's two tiers. There's like a regular and then a limited license, and a lot of that, what you read is wildly incorrect, because the limited license allows for like lower threshold in terms of volume, eliminates the capital requirement, but you can only operate within Lithuania. So for purposes of a global operation, it's really not useful, nor does it help you springboard to the next tier, which is the regular, which is what everybody is ultimately going to be, applying for anyway. But, in terms of what you can do, it's as broad as anything, right? Money transfer, foreign exchange, debit card issuances, anything. But despite, I think, what people tell you or what you read, it's not the easiest place, right? Like there's this belief that Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia are all very easy places to obtain either crypto or EMI licenses. And that may have been the case, 6, 5, 4, even 4 years ago, but they've revamped all that in part because there was such an influx, especially on the crypto side, which isn't so probative, but it's there. And so there's been enhanced sort of due diligence and costs associated with it because they just weren't there before. And the whole concept of EU passporting is that the licenses are somewhat homogenous, even though the amounts that are required for like capital and insurance, these things I just mentioned, are not homogenous from one nation to another. So it's always worth it, depending on where you are, to still look at, cost structures for like Czech Republic, Poland, other places for just EMI, because you may find those to be a better deal, right? And they offer you the same thing. It's just optics, ability to get banking, and how much it costs to get the license. So if you have any questions regarding the Lithuanian license, definitely hit me up, adamtracy.io. Talk to you next time. Cheers.